Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for the Stamp It Like It's Hot hop. And in this hop, we use stamping to create scrapbooking layouts. Each month there's a new prompt. And for September, the prompt is backwards stamping or reverse stamping. And I had never tried this technique before. And I was really happy that Shannon from the Stamp It Like It's Hot group posted a video for us by Monica Hayward from Life is Art so that we could see what backward stamping is all about. So what you do is you take a clear stamp and you reverse it on your acrylic block, and then you ink up the back of the stamp, and then you stamp it on your paper. It creates a background, and then you can reverse the stamp back again and stamp the detailed image over the reverse stamping. And between the reverse stamping and the regular stamping, you get a really cool image. To try this technique out, I used two different stamp sets. They are both made by Close to My Heart. This first one is called Lucy Workshop, and it had two different flowers on it. I'm starting off with the larger flower, and then later on I'm going to stamp the smaller flower. I'm using a piece of smooth white cardstock, and I'm also using some distress inks. For the pink color, I use kitsch flamingo, and I also use spun sugar. The spun sugar is a little bit of a lighter color than the kitsch flamingo, and that's for the reverse stamping. For the regular stamping, I use some Staz On Ink in jet black. I made a couple of those large pink flowers. I'm going to go back in again and I'm going to stamp more of those large flowers on this sheet. But first I wanted to stamp a whole bunch of smaller flowers. And for those flowers, I used another stamp from that Lucy Workshop set. And then I also used some fossilized amber and squeezed lemonade distress inks. Now I'm stamping some leaves, and for the leaves I use a different set that's called Floral Celebration. I used Staz On in Cactus Green, and that's for the reverse stamping, and I once again use the Staz On Ink for the regular stamping. I also used another Staz On ink called Fuchsia Pink to make some darker flowers. That way I would have three different tones of flowers. Although I have to say that it turned out that it looked like there were more than three different tones. Some of the flowers came out very light and some of them came out very dark. And you can see on these flowers, sometimes with the reverse stamping, I didn't get color all over the area that I was stamping. I could have redone it, but I actually really liked the way that that looked with the little white highlights on it, so I decided to just leave it. Then I fussy cut out all of my flowers, and then I used two flowers to make each of the larger flowers. I just offset them a little bit. That made them look much fuller. And then I put a little bit of foam on the bottom of the flower I was going to place on top. I used ATG adhesive to attach those two flowers together, and that foam gave the flowers, I thought, a nice little bit of dimension. But of course, if you're not a huge fan of dimension, you could attach the two flowers right down against each other. And then I put a jewel in the center, and I used a couple of different jewels that I had in my stash. I had some by Park Lane, I had some that were unbranded, some by Paper Studio. I just matched up the color with the color of the flower. And for the small yellow flowers, I used some white enamel dots in the centers. And I put a little dot of glossy accents in the center of each of the flower just to make sure that enamel dot stayed put. So now I'm creating my background. I'm using a Paige Evans collection called Go the Scenic Route. I just love this particular collection because of all of the bright colors. Unfortunately, I started acquiring it a little bit late and there weren't too many embellishments available. I was able to get a number of pattern papers in 12 by 12. I also got the small 6 by 8 inch pad, but the only other thing I was able to find when I was shopping in Joann, and they were having a sale, of course, I'm sure I could find more things online, was the chipboard sheet. So those are the things that I have to work with. So I use a really pretty pink and orange paper for the outside mat, and then I use a very thin white border. Inside that, I have that really pretty, it looks like a painted background with lots of different bright colors. And then I'm using this photo of my daughter Danielle. She was at a cafe and it looks like they had a Van Gogh painting behind her that was probably enlarged to cover the wall, I'm guessing from the photo. And I really love the way the brush strokes in the Van Gogh kind of go with the brush strokes on this pattern paper. I thought it was also a good color match. So I mounted my photo on some white cardstock and then again on some of the pink paper, the same paper that I used for the background. And then I added some foam to the back. I popped it up and then I attached it down to the layout in the upper left-hand corner. So now I have my pink flowers that I backward stamped. Does that make sense? Backwards stamped. And I am trying to make a couple of different clusters using those flowers. I'm starting off with the large flowers, and then later on I'm going to add the smaller flowers around them. Right now I'm trying to figure out how I want to arrange the flowers. I'm going to have 2 clusters of 2 flowers and then a larger cluster underneath the photo. And then once I am pretty sure that I like where I have the flowers, I'm just going ahead and attaching them down. I've been trying lately not to overthink things too much. It's a little bit hard not to overthink things a little bit, but I'm trying to try new things by not thinking about them too much, just kind of going for it and attaching them down. And if I really don't like them, I can always move them around later, or usually I can move them around later. So I have the large flowers attached down. I put a little bit of foam behind some of the flowers just because the ones that are sitting on top of my photo, they needed that to make them sit level on the page. And then I started adding some of the chipboard pieces that I picked out. So the title is going to be Life is Beautiful, which is written on that heart that's in the upper right-hand corner. There were also some other embellishments that I thought were cute, like this bird that I'm placing in my larger cluster. I also found some butterflies. There were only 2 butterflies that would fit on the page. It was a really large one, but I thought it was just a little bit too large. And I'm going to end up revisiting that whole butterfly topic, but for right now, I just have those 2 butterflies on the page. And then next I brought in the smaller yellow flowers and I'm going to add them as little embellishments all around the clusters and fill in little gaps that are made by the large pink flowers and the other embellishments. I have to tell you that I'm really, really glad that I joined this hop. I have so many stamps and I love using stamps, but I don't tend to break them out and use them on scrapbook layouts all the time. I do use a lot of stamps in my backgrounds, but I don't often use stamps that are images like this. And I have to say, I really enjoy doing it and I have to try to do it more often. I was looking at the chipboard sheet because I wanted to see what else I could add to the layout. I have a lot of larger elements on the page, so I was looking for some small ones, and I noticed that there were quite a few little tiny hearts, and they were all different colors and a few different sizes on the smaller side, but there were some that were a little bit smaller than others, and I thought that those would be good embellishments to place around the clusters. And I'm just noticing now, watching the video back, that there was another butterfly on the chipboard sheet. It's actually a really pretty one. I don't know what I was thinking, I just didn't notice it, but it turned out to be a good thing that I didn't notice it because I ended up adding some other butterflies and I was really happy that I added those. And I don't know if I would have if I had 3 butterflies. Now I'm using my adhesive and I'm attaching all of those elements down to the page, the flowers, the chipboard pieces, everything that's on the layout. And the chipboard pieces, as you probably know, always come with glue on the back, or often come with glue on the back. But the chipboard pieces that I had in this pack, they did have glue on them, but the glue was like all dried out, so I had to attach them down using ATG adhesive. And then before I put this layout away, I'm going to add some gel glue to the back of a lot of these elements because I've been finding that I'm not always putting as much glue as I should on the backs of my embellishments, and I sometimes have some elements that fall off. Now I'm adding some leaves to the layout. I don't think that I showed you that I made 4 different styles of leaves, again using that same close to my heart Floral Celebration stamp set. There was one leaf stamp that was rather large. That's the one that I showed you earlier when I was stamping with it. And then I also used two medium-sized leaf stamps. And then there was a much smaller one, so I made a number of those leaves too. If you've been with me for a while, you've probably heard me say that I really like to use embellishments in different sizes. I think that it adds a lot of variety and it makes the layout look a little bit more interesting. So you could see that I'm using all the different sizes in all three of the clusters. And I just love the way that those different sizes look tucked in behind the flowers. And I think that the introduction of this color of green really made a difference in the way the layout looked. Before, the color scheme just seemed a little bit too pink, and now I think with all of this green, I think that it kind of balances everything out. So one day a few months ago, I was at a yard sale, and there was a woman there who was selling a whole bunch of stamps from Close to My Heart. And I asked her if she used to be a Close to My Heart consultant, and she said no, she just had those in her personal collection. I can identify with that. She had a lot of stamps. And so she said, I am getting rid of a lot of my stamps because I'm more into scrapbooking now and not so much into stamping. And I didn't feel it was really my place to say anything to her, but I was thinking that she had a lot of really nice stamps that she could have used to make some embellishments for her layouts. And because I have so many stamps, I didn't want to go crazy buying from her, but she did have one set of really beautiful border stamps, so I bought that set. But I have so many stamps in my stash that I have yet to use, so I'm trying to concentrate on using those before I buy new ones. My weakness when it comes to stamps and dies is buying flower and leaf stamps. I just feel like whenever I see those, I want to buy them. And I must be in good company because I noticed that manufacturers tend to make tons and tons of floral stamps. So it must be something that a lot of crafters like to have in their stash. I shop a lot at a creative reuse center. It's basically like a thrift store for crafting supplies, which I love shopping there. I try not to go there too much because every time I go there, I find so much great stuff that I really don't need to purchase. The problem is that the prices are so low that it's very hard to resist. They have embossing powders for 50 cents and they have rubber stamps for 25 cents each. I bought a whole set of floral stamps for $2.25. And the first time I went there, I bought a whole lot of stuff. But over time, I've gotten better about just picking out the things that I feel like I'm going to use. Well, I have most of the leaves attached down. I do add a few more a little bit later in the process. And now I'm attaching down those little tiny chipboard hearts. I didn't want them to get lost. I was mentioning recently on one of my videos how I do tend to lose those little tiny embellishments. They go missing and I spend way too much time looking for them. When I was stamping the leaf stamps, I thought I was making way too many, and I did end up with a few extras, but far less than I thought I was going to. I did add quite a few leaves to each one of the clusters. Now I'm adding some photo corners to the photo. I use a punch from EK Success and I use the same pattern paper that I used for the background, and I punch out two kind of light orange photo corners, and there's only two visible corners on this photo, so I only punch out two photo corners and then I add a pearl to each of them. And now I'm adding some bling to my butterflies. I'm using some strips of little jewels that I had in my stash. And then I'm also adding one of those little jewels to each of those tiny little hearts that are on the page. And I get these stickers from a company called Creative Arts. They're called Angel's Craft Stone Stickers. I find that these stickers come in really handy because they're very tiny, but they're also very shiny. So perfect bling to add to a layout. And then for a few days, I thought the layout was complete. And then right before I voiced over this video, I looked at the layout and I thought I need to add some white back into this layout. It's really, really colorful. And I think that white would really pop on the page and add a nice element to it. So I cut out a number of these branches. I used 2 dies. They're matching dies. They go in different directions. One of them is to the left of my mat, and I bought those from eBay a really long time ago. I wish I could find them because I would buy more of them. I use this die so often that it would be nice to be able to cut out more at the same time. But in any case, I'm glad I have the 2 that I have, and I cut them out of some thin white smooth cardstock. And on this layout, I cut those branches into smaller pieces. In some cases, very small pieces, and in other cases, I leave them a little bit bigger. And then once I had tucked them into the 3 clusters, I used some gel glue to attach them down. And I'm really glad that I added those. I'm very happy and think that they were a good touch for the layout. So because I thought I didn't have 3 butterflies, 1 for each cluster, I started thinking about butterflies. And then I realized that the smaller paper pad had a paper that had lots of little tiny butterflies on it. I didn't have that same paper in the 12 by 12. So I fussy cut out quite a few of those butterflies from that piece of pattern paper. Some are more medium and some are very, very tiny. And then I added some fun foam to the backs of their wings. And I tried to cut those strips of foam very thin so you wouldn't see the foam from the front. And I like to put the adhesive on the foam and also on the center of the butterfly. That way, if you press down on the center of the butterfly, the wings look like they pop up a little bit. And I know I mentioned that on so many of my videos, but I think that it's a cool effect. So I always mention it just in case someone hasn't heard it yet. I wanted to make sure that there were some butterflies in the upper right-hand corner because that's the cluster that didn't have any butterflies to begin with. And then I added quite a few in the large cluster at the bottom. And I only added 1 extra one to the cluster on the upper left-hand corner. There wasn't quite as much room to add things to that cluster, and I didn't want to overcrowd it. So I thought 2 was enough for that particular part of the layout. And that I wanted those butterflies to have some jewels just like the other butterflies that are on the page. So I once again used my strips of adhesive jewels and I added those to all of the centers. And that's the very last thing that I add to my layout, and the layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I really had a lot of fun trying backwards stamping. Take a look in the description box to find a link to the playlist for Stamp It Like It's Hot. You'll find lots of amazing videos, both from this month's challenge and also past Stamp It Like It's Hot videos. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.